Thank you.
No problem.
This working? Hello, hello. Let's see here. First and foremost, let's just give a huge shout out to our sponsors today, because without you guys, we wouldn't have been here. So Tier 1 Abstract, we have Nicole. We have Andrew Lamonigo. Around here somewhere, and Mr. Matt Rubino. So really quickly, I'm going to be taking care of the buyer consultation portion of this. I saw about a quarter of everybody raise their hands. And before we even get into this, there's going to be a bunch of things that we talk about today that you guys might know. But even if you take one thing away from today, that, in my opinion, is huge and invaluable. Because even when we met and discussed, and when I say we, the panel people over here, even when we met and discussed, I took things away. And everyone can learn something. Whether you're 1 year in the business or 20 years in the business, it's invaluable. So what I do for my buyer consultation that I've gotten great feedback on is I've created what I call a flip book. And I created that, and I created a first-time homebuyer packet. Whoa. If I wasn't white, like as pale white, now I am white, let me tell you. I need a tan. What I do is I have a first-time homebuyer packet and a flip book, as I was mentioning. I'm gonna scroll through the flip book really quick. So this is something that I like to email to a buyer before we even go see a property. So I get a text message from a friend or a family member or Googly, whatever it is. Hi, my name's Chris. I'm looking to purchase a home. Cool. Can you do me a favor and start a group chat with me, you, your significant other, your parents, whoever's buying the house together, and can you send me everyone's email addresses? Oh, can we go see XYZ Main Street? Nope. Can you do me a favor? And I don't say nope like that. Very, very nicely. Can you just start up a group chat and then just send me all your email addresses? Perfect. I'm going to email you my first-time homebuyer flip book and my first-time homebuyer packet. My flip book explains the process. I would say probably 50% of the buyers click through this, but I also have had where people click through it and I say to them, hey, while we're negotiating, hey, I want to talk to you about the appraisal because we're probably going to waive that. I'm assuming everyone's going through that. And you have some buyers who say, I have no idea what you're talking about, and you're going to explain everything. But then I will say the majority of my buyers turn to me and say, I learned all about that in your flip book. And I was like, wow, this is working. So the flip book is very, very simple and basic. You can keep going. Next slide. Next. So this is just, again, this is a quick, read this on your free time, and then let's set up a call to discuss the first-time home buyer packet. You can click through this quick. So this just explains the process. I'm hoping that they read this. Next slide. Some key terms. I like sending this to them, and I really do say to especially first-time home buyers, take a peek at those key terms, okay? Because when I was a first-time home buyer, if you would have said to me an appraisal, I would have had no idea what you're talking about. I can't even spell it, okay? So I have no idea. So I really do like when they take a look at the key terms. Next slide. And then we can go through this kind of quick. Like, it just explains the process. Defining your needs. Next one. Getting pre-approved, because we all want to do that first. Contact Eric Braun, shout out. Let the home, this is, again, basic. Next slide. And you guys can all make this for yourself. Next slide, because I'm going to go in detail on something else. Next slide, negotiation, inspection, we all know the process. Then you get to your attorney, two great attorneys today. The mortgage process and closing. So this kind of just like explains the process. I like to send this to them and tell them to glance through it before we set up our buyer consultation call. And then if you want to go to the packet, this is my meat and potatoes. I created this myself on Microsoft Word. And this is so I create this, I send this to them, and I say you could fill out page 2 directly into the first-time homebuyers packet. I set it up for Microsoft Word, and I set it up for Google Docs, where there's text boxes. I send this to them, and I say, do me a favor and just fill out page 2 with whoever you're purchasing a home with, send it back to me, and then let me know your availability this week so we can set up a 30-minute call. Okay, this is just page 1, the cover. I do like sending this. This is the team that I'm on. I do like sending this as well, because it shows, if you are on a team, in my opinion, I think you should show your buyer not just their names, but their faces as well, because you can't be everywhere at once. Okay, so I am a big fan of just putting a face to a name, so I like having this as here as well. Scroll down, one more up, bro. Okay, so this is where I live, right here. I created this in Microsoft Word and Docs so that you can fill this out and send it back to me. Okay, and there's a reason behind every single text box I have here. I like to know their current address because I want to see how far they're moving from. I want to see their plans because X, Y, and Z lead comes in, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. And then all of a sudden, they live in Pennsylvania. Usually it's a referral partner, and usually it's a friend, I get that. But I like to know their current address just to see how far the distances of where they're living now and where they're going. I like to have their occupations in here because a lot of times, well, for two main reasons. One, when you send an offer, it's very important, in my opinion, and we're going to get to sending offers. In my opinion, when you send an offer, if your buyer has a really great occupation, highlight that. And also, too, you want to get to know your buyer. Every single time I talk to you, I don't want to be like, shit, what does she do for a living again? And like we all work with a bunch of buyers. It's hard to memorize everything. I refer back to this a lot, all right? So like if you have like, also too for occupations, if you have someone who's like a police officer and a teacher, that's a home run of a buyer because you can just sell that as like, hey, they're guaranteed to get their mortgage, you know? Like it's pretty simple. So occupations, in my opinion, is huge to have that here. And I like this before I get it because for the majority of people in this room that know me, I have another job as well. So like if I can connect with people with occupations, it's a conversation starter. Desired move-in date is huge because you can just go take a buyer out to go see a bunch of homes on a day, and then while you go see them, they might turn to you and say, well, we're really not looking to move until next year. Well, how many of us know that the market here on Long Island changes, I was about to say monthly, maybe it's almost like weekly depending on the mortgage rates, you know? So I think it's really great to just have that information. I'll go take you out, don't get me wrong, we're not gonna not take buyers out, but I wanna know that going into our first appointment is what your timeline is. I think that's really, really important. So that also too, like desired move-in date with your timeline, if you know that going into your first appointment without, you're asking a million questions rather than showing the home and explaining the home, now you're gonna be asking them, what's your move-in date? You're gonna be almost like having that first conversation in the house. The listing agent's gonna look at you like, do you even know them? You know? So have that conversation prior to going to your first appointment. Home search requirements here. In the beginning, I didn't think that this was as important, but then I created this because of a lot of the mistakes that I made, actually. We showed up and I like to be really personable. If you have kids before we go into your appointment and I don't know that, shame on me. That's just my opinion. I want to know you. We're going to be doing this for transactions at least 3 months if you get them a house in the first weekend. So I think this is super important, especially for the personal touch. I want to know because also too, if they put down they have 3 kids and they've never bought a house before, if they put down 3 children and 2 adults and we're looking for a 3-bed, 1-bath ranch in Plainview, that might be a little small, So you can help coach them on your first couple of appointments. Preferred town and preferred school districts here, I think is super important too because especially for preferred towns, you want to look like that that educated broker, that educated realtor. So for example, I don't mind telling everyone, I live in Seaford. If somebody puts down preferred towns, Seaford and Wantagh, I'm gonna ask them, what about Massapequa? Because it's right next door. They might turn to me and say, well, that school district's too big, I don't want to go there, and this and that, and then you can explain to them, well, then Massapequa has 5 different school districts. So then boom, you look like that educated realtor. So going into it, I like to see what preferred towns. I'm working with a lot of buyers right now on the North Shore in Suffolk County. So right off the bat, if I see preferred towns, if I see Smithtown, Comac, and I don't see East Northport, I'm just gonna ask them, what about East Northport? What about Northport? And also too, in a market like today, where it's really challenging for buyers, you want to expand that search as much as possible to different towns. I mean, again, they might turn to you and say, I grew up there, I want a different coffee shop, but have that conversation before you go into that first appointment. Preferred school districts, I know this is a touchy subject and we really can't talk about school districts, and I saved myself on the last slide, you'll see. But I do like to put preferred school districts in here because we live in a niche market like Long Island. I just talked about Massapequa, how there's 5 different school districts. So some people don't always know that. So I like to see what they put here for school districts, because I also like to see how educated the buyer is. So if they put preferred towns and they only list one school district, to me that just tells me that you either grew up in that town or you don't know that there's 5 school districts. And I want to know that before we go look at the first home. So you can be that educational broker. Price range here and down payment. When I was in my first year in real estate, I did not have down payment here. And I learned from my mistakes so many times, because I would go to them when we're going to make the offer and say, what are you putting down? And then they turn to me and they say, well, we're going to do 3%. And I say to myself, I really wish I would have had that conversation with them when we started. You could ask any mortgage lender, you can probably go get a loan for 3.5%, and you could go buy a house for that. But we all know that on Long Island right now in the seller's market, that if you're offering 3.5% or 3%, you're not the strongest buyer. We know that. So I want to know what your down payment is right off the bat. Because also too, if I see 3.5%, if I see that here, my assumption is that a mortgage lender told them that they can get a loan for that, which you can. But did the mortgage lender have a conversation with you where like, hey, you could do 5%, you could do 10%. I had that once as a buyer. I did not ask what their down payment was. They went into the whole entire process thinking that they were going to do 3.5% down because they could. And they easily, and the entire time we went out, all they were stressed about is they wanted to lower their monthly payment. And they saw a mortgage lender, it was not Eric, they saw a mortgage lender post 1 million times about how they can get a loan for 3.5%, they can get a loan for 3.5%. So they said to themselves, okay, we'll get a loan for 3.5%. And they were stressed, and they were freaking out, they wanted to lower their monthly payment. So I was like, okay, well, did you have the conversation about lowering your payment to 20% down? Because you said you could afford it. And they turned to me and they said, well, I heard that that was bad. So we're in the middle of an open house, and they said that to me. You don't want to start having that conversation in the middle of an open house, because then it just doesn't, the appointment does not flow. So I think it's super important to send this to them, to fill it out prior to you taking them out that first time, so you can have these conversations. And then some of this stuff is kind of basic. The preferred styles, need to have and nice to have. I put this here because this really, really, really helps coach buyers as to what your needs are and what your wants are. Because as we all know, you'll see in nice to have a built-in pool and like, oh my God, wait a second, I need to have a built-in pool. No, you don't. You need to find a house. Like when I see central air in need to have, it's like you want to have those conversations before you go out. Let's go find the house. Let's go find the house that fits you and your family the best. And the feedback that I've gotten is that this helps the buyers understand realistic expectations. Because how many times do we have buyers, we work with a buyer and they're a couple, and it's like we have the buyer consultation call, and then I'll either get a call from like the girlfriend or the wife or the husband and the boyfriend being like, hey, I'm so glad that you told them that we don't really need central air. Let's go look for a house that works for us. And it's like, I got you. I'll take care of you. And then obviously your bed, baths here. Oil and gas, when I like to see this written here, because when people write gas, I like to correlate if they wrote gas, like in all caps. And then I like to look at current address, and if it's like Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and they're moving out to Long Island, when you live in the 5 boroughs, I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it's like 95% of the 5 boroughs is gas. And there's a lot of homes on Long Island with oil. And then you go to find your dream house, and then the parents come in and say it's oil, you're not allowed to buy the house. Again, have that conversation here now. I grew up with oil my whole entire life. Some of you guys might hate oil. Some of you guys might not. It doesn't matter. I just like to have those conversations prior to our first appointment. If you want to go to the next slide, or my next page of my home time, this is only blacked out because the font, this is normally it says the process, and it just spells out, I don't know why it's like this, but it just spells out going to see homes. It's a first-time home buyer packet, and it just spells out the whole entire process. Next slide. So this is super important. This is one that I keep on me and I send out every week. This is my closing email. You'll get this in an email, but this is one of them that I've been thanked about a million times. So they have this in an email, but after you send a first-time home buyer email, when do they ever look at it? Never. We go look for homes and that's it. They're never gonna look at it again. So this actually helped me. The week before every single one of my closings, I copy and paste this and then alter it to every single deal that I have. So I will say to you, all right, a week before we close, I'm gonna send you a closing email. Because I swear I've had this where I had a family with 2 babies that moved into a house in Massapequa in February. They didn't do this, you learn from your mistakes, and they had no heat for a week. It was February. So I give them the number for electric and gas. I give you how to set up your water, your cable. If you're a police officer, you get or any union worker, you get $500 off. They love me for that. And then all your property taxes at the end. But again, so that's basically it for the slides. But I'm at my time. But I just think it's super, super important. If you have any questions afterwards, let me know. But having that buyer consultation and hammering out all the questions before you go into your appointments is kind of like the first step of the process. And if you do your buyer consultation during your first stretch of open houses, it doesn't look the best. So definitely set up those calls and have that 15, 20-minute chat with them before we go. Cool? On to the next.